can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're gonna be talking about X-Men number 19 by Jerry Duggan and Stefano Caselli. This issue brings us back to one of the X-Men's most vicious and most, I would say, reviled villains in the history of Marvel Comics, the Brood. Now, I'm gonna show some age here, but the Brood are only a year older than I am, having debuted in 1981's Uncanny X-Men number 155 and are creations of Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. The Brood are a pretty savage species of X-villain just by sheer volume of the fact. You can tell that these X-villains were derived from Ridley Scott's Alien, which came out in 1979, so this was all still probably very fresh in a lot of people's heads. And this villain is used in a lot of the same ways. For those unfamiliar, the Brood as an alien species, they are, for all intents and purposes, a matriarchy. And in layman terms, that basically means that not only is the female the deadliest of the species, but also the leader of it. And while some people would probably think that the Brood are an unintelligent species, they actually are quite intelligent. They have ways of space travel. They've been experimented on by the Kree. They also have enough intelligence to take pleasure in the pain and suffering of other species. And while the similarities between aliens are fairly obvious, they also reproduce in ways very similar to what you would see in the Aliens movie franchise, where they implant eggs into a living being, eating their way out of their host. But one unique twist with the Brood that xenomorphs from the Alien franchise don't have, the Brood, whenever they implant an egg inside of a living host, that host starts taking on Brood qualities while they're carrying that egg. And when that Brood is born, they consume that host in a certain manner of speaking, but also turns that host into a Brood themselves, and they add whatever intelligence and power that that being had to their hive. Hence why the Brood are so dangerous to mutant kind, and more specifically to the Earth should the X-Men be taken over by them. Last issue of X-Men number 18, we learned that Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan's father, Corsair, had somehow mysteriously run afoul of the Brood and had been implanted with an egg. And this issue is all about the X-Men going into the outer rim of space and trying to hunt down the Brood and the Summers Patriarch, only to discover the biggest infestation of Brood in recent memory. Now, all of this is callback to the X-Men's recent interactions with the Brood over the last 2 or 3 years. All of which started after House of X number 6 in New Mutants number 1 by Jonathan Hickman, Ed Brisson, and Rob Race, where the New Mutants had discovered the Shi'ar had a secret weapon languishing in their vaults for thousands of years that could change the social infrastructure of the Brood forever. A king egg, an artificial Brood egg with pheromones that could control the entire species. Normally, as I said earlier, the Brood are a matriarchal monarchy. This egg could completely undo all of that, giving the control of the Brood to whoever wields the egg. And while initially it didn't seem like the egg did anything, or maybe that it just didn't work, the New Mutants held onto it even after their encounter with the Shi'ar. And just a few scant months later, we learn that the New Mutants bringing that egg back to Krakoa led to the Brood overrunning Krakoa in Jonathan Hickman, Mahmoud Asrar, and Lionel Francis Yu's X-Men number 8 and 9. The Brood had run roughshod over Krakoa until the X-Men could push them back to the moon. The only thing that saved the Earth was a mutant Brood by the name of Brew. This is something I brought up on more than a few occasions, but if you are confused as to how an alien species can be a mutant in the same way that humans can be mutants, it's not that Brew has an X gene. He's a mutant because he's unlike any other of his species, because he has compassion, and while he does have the capacity to be a mass murdering monster, he doesn't necessarily have a desire to do so. Hence, why he's a mutant. Brew ate the contents of the egg and gave himself control over the entirety of the Brood, becoming their king. Or so we thought. This storyline went largely unaddressed for roughly almost 2.5 years since those story elements were introduced. It wouldn't be until New Mutants number 21 by Vita Ayala and Rob Race, where it was teased that the control former X-Man Brew had gained in 2020's X-Men number 9 might not be as absolute as originally thought. Since Brew has become leader of the Brood, things have been kind of weird. Brood are randomly attacking in places they shouldn't be and acting against Brew's commands, with him even stating there's an active rebellion against his rule. Brew has even been acting strange himself, like he's trying to hide that he's lost control of the Brood in its entirety.
Now, it can't be overstated enough that the main reason that Brew is having difficulty controlling the other Brood is because of a data page that was in that issue of X-Men number 9, where it stated that production of a rival king egg can disrupt the host control of the hive. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Kree or the Shi'ar, or maybe even the Brood themselves, engineered a new king egg to throw off Brew's control of the hive, because as he's already stated, he's dealing with a rebellion, so it's not unlikely that someone else produced a king egg to throw off his rule, or the Brood, who some of them aren't happy with the fact that he's leading them. Hell, they could have done it.
Either way, we know for a fact that a Brood Empress, the largest, most powerful, and highest class of Brood naturally occurring in their species, has reappeared in recent issues of Captain Marvel number 43, 44, and 45, and even this week's Captain Marvel number 46. The titular captain, her Boothang, War Machine, and her allies Hazmat and Spider-Woman have been working with the X-Men to shut down the Brood, but it's been going rather, I would say, poorly as of late. Mostly because Rogue had already been implanted with a Brood egg and was proving to be a whole entire problem for Team Captain Marvel and the X-Men. And for those who have not been keeping up, Rogue had not long ago gained the ability to steal mutants' powers without even having to touch them. And she's using this against Team Captain Marvel and the X-Men to the point that they had no choice but to shoot Rogue out of the airlock of the spaceship they were traveling in and burn her with the afterjets just to get rid of her. And while they've been thinking that they're still fighting the good fight against the Brood and later having drinks with the Shi'ar, in truth, they've actually been trapped by the Brood and living out some form of simulation, while in reality, many, if not all of them, both X-Men and Team Captain Marvel alike, have been implanted with Brood eggs. Now, for those wondering if Rogue was killed off way too easily, it's actually not the case. This week's issue of Captain Marvel number 46 revealed that the part where Rogue had attacked them and was implanted with a Brood egg was also part of the simulation. All in all, this is bad news for the X-Men, because while yes, they have found Corsair, and they are actually able, with the combined efforts of Alpha Laura Kinney, who no longer goes by the name Wolverine, having given that name over to the resurrected Laura Kinney that never experienced the incidents of the Vault in Jonathan Hickman's number 18 and 19. The, I guess for all intents and purposes, the original version of Laura Kinney now goes by the name Talon, and Talon and Sync have used their combined efforts to excise the Brood that is gestating within Corsair from him. And this one's actually taking a great toll on Sync, because he's using Jean Grey's powers again from memory. And this is also the issue where we learn a lot more about how much everyone else knows about what's going on with Sync, where in this issue it's been made evident Sync still hasn't told the rest of the group about how using his power to sync with other mutants' X genes, pulling their powers from his memory, not just using it from proximity, ages him significantly. And apparently the only person he had told was Talon. And Talon makes this reveal to the rest of the group because they're wanting him to use the powers of other mutants, namely magic, to help them escape the Brood at this particular point in time. Meanwhile, the Brood are bearing down on them, and that's just one of the many problems going on right now with the X-Men, because on the other side of things, Forge and Monet have also gone star jumping off through a Krakoan gate that used to be on the former Guardians of the Galaxy home base, Nowhere. Now, if you're wondering how they they got one on there since Krakoa technically wasn't exactly a thing. Back when Nowhere was sank into a black hole, back during 2019's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 5, Number 6, it would be one of those deals where there was no way they could get a flower on there because those events happened before Krakoa had fully formed. But Forge easily explains it away that Cable and Forge used time travel to place a Krakoan gate there before it was sank into a black hole. And right now, Monet and Forge have gone through that gate because it is still active to see what happened. And right now, we know that the X-Men are very likely going to come across some very interesting things, considering that when that black hole had absorbed Nowhere, it wasn't just Nowhere that went with it. It also took the essence of Thanos and seemingly the Asgardian goddess of death, Hela, along with it. That said, we've seen both Hela and Thanos more recently, just based on the fact that Thanos was resurrected during Kieran Gillen's Eternals arc, and Hela has made various appearances in other comics, namely Thor's, as well as the Mighty Valkyries, and more recently in Carnage. But it just makes me wonder exactly what's gonna happen there, because right now, Forge and Monet are having an out-of-body experience, and their astral selves are walking around while their actual bodies are just laying on the floor, almost as if they were dead. So right now there's a lot of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey in space xenomorphy shenanigans going on, and it's all pretty fun, even if it is terrifying for the people involved. But right now, that's everything going on with the X-Men right now regarding the Brood saga that just recently started. And while it kind of seems like the Captain Marvel side of it is coming to a close here very soon, since we've got 4 issues in, and Marvel usually ends these things on like 5-issue arcs, sometimes 6, but it seems like whatever's happening on the Captain Marvel side is going to bleed over into what's going on the X-Men side, because the X-Men have only just recently kicked off this arc. But there's a lot of awesome stuff going on, and honestly, I think if you are the least bit a fan of the Brood, I would say you might want to take the time to sit down and check out both of these comics right now. They're also really freaking good right now. Seeing Captain Marvel hanging out with her old pals, the X-Men, which a lot of people don't remember this, but that was kind of one of the big deals as to why Carol Danvers was always so intrinsically tied to the X-Men. Back in the Chris Claremont days, Carol Danvers used to hang out with the X-Men a lot. So the idea of Captain Marvel hanging out with the X-Men and, you know, her group of people hanging out with them and just all of them getting to know one another, it also leads to some very interesting shenanigans with Quanon, who, for those who have not been keeping up, Quanon is now operating as Psylocke since, you know, once upon a time, Betsy Braddock was inhabiting her body. Betsy Braddock is now going by the name Captain Britain instead, and Quanon is now Psylocke, but that's neither here nor there. Point of the matter is that not too long ago, Carol Danvers had gone into the future and seen that Quanon is gonna have a child with Forge at some point, a child by the name of Sora. And this is a really cool and interesting deal too, because as of late, Quanon has been grieving over the destruction of the mutant backup of her daughter that was revealed during the Fallen Angel series, like back when House of X had just ended, and the backup of that child that Mr. Sinister had created for her was destroyed by Havoc during the Hellion series. So the idea of her having a child again somewhere down the road is a huge deal for her. And we're also seeing a lot of really cool stuff as far as interactions go between the X-Men and Team Captain Marvel. I think is very awesome. I love to see stuff like that. So I do highly recommend, if you have not been keeping up with the whole arc of this, I do recommend you check out Captain Marvel, because this story arc has been really good. But anyways, that's everything I want to talk about with X-Men number 19. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure that you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I put out. The goal is to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube in 2023, and I need the help of you, Earth's Mightiest subscribers of the present, liking, sharing, commenting, all that good stuff, as well as the help of you, Earth's Mightiest subscribers of the future, clicking that big red button. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about X-Men number 19. Keep it plus ultra. Sound off in the comments.